If your business is stagnant or even sliding backwards, what I'll share with you today may improve your fortunes. I'm going to give you a roadmap of issues to look at inside of your company. I'm also going to give you 10 questions to ask yourself. Also, after that, going to give you a custom GPT that you can use to help take a look at where your business may be struggling. My name is Tim Francis. This is the HP3 show. We're here for high performance, high profit, and high purpose. I'm a veteran of over 150 board meetings. I've saved 11 companies from bankruptcy, and I've helped many companies add hundreds of thousands of dollars of profit within just a matter of a few months. It is such a pleasure and an honor to get to see the financials of a lot of different companies. And where we're going to start today is by taking a look at something I invented. It's called a profit factory. This model will really help to kind of unpack, let's say, some of the questions or diagnose the problems that you may have. So what you see on the screen here, this is a profit factory. And why this matters so much is oftentimes when we are diagnosing problems in the boardroom, we need to know where is the cause and effect happening. So when we talk about cause and effect, it's like if sales are down, is that because the product doesn't fit anymore? Is it because the person selling doesn't care anymore? Is it because a competitor has come? We don't know. And a really wonderful question that I've heard in the boardroom is, what are we solving for? There's a great quote from Charles Deming, I think is who said it, 1974. He said, "A problem well defined is half solved." Most masterminds I've been in, they spend so much time just ideating, brainstorming, idea-gasming on how to get more clients, how to increase revenue, how to increase revenue. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the financials of a company where revenue is going up and up and up, profits are going down and down, cash is going down, and they literally sold themselves into bankruptcy. It is mind-blowing that this is possible, but I'm telling you, I've seen it over and over again. There are a lot of companies who've won Inc. 500 awards. They're now called Inc. 5000 awards, so they could sell more advertising, get more businesses involved in it. And they'll be on the Inc. 5000 awards 1 year, and within 3 years, they're gone. And I don't mean off the list. I mean bankrupt or closed. And a big part of that is because they're just focused on vanity metrics, like how many users or how much revenue. It's vanity. It doesn't actually generate true long-term sustainable success. So we need to diagnose where the problem is. And the first tip I can give you is spend way more time on the problem. Most masterminds I've ever been in the last 15 years will spend something like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, where the person in the hot seat will talk about their problem. There may not even be anyone who asks a single clarifying question, and people just go around the room and start slinging their answers. Oh my word. I will create some video on another day of how colossally wrong those approaches were. I'll give you some true tales from the boardroom. For now, we'll keep moving forward talking about your business. So let's take a look back at the screen. And what you'll see here is 3 distinct areas: acquisition, fulfillment, so acquisition right here, fulfillment right here, and mothership. So acquisition is making promises to get customers, fulfillment is fulfilling on those promises through fulfillment, and mothership is going to be largely the back office. So things like finance, legal, HR, that kind of thing. Now, every business on planet Earth has these 3 engine rooms. Doesn't matter whether you're a solopreneur or whether you are Apple with $380 billion in revenue or whatever their number is these days. Every business has these 3 engine rooms, and in a bigger business, they'll simply have more in them. So for example, you don't really see any kind of R&D in here. However, R&D could very much sit inside of fulfillment, maybe mothership, where fulfillment is talking to customers, asking them what do they need next, what do they need next, what do they need next, and that product development then kicks over to acquisition so we can get more people for the new thing. In our work in the boardroom, we really want to know which of the engine rooms has the 80-20 issue, and of the engine room that has the 80-20 issue, where is the issue? We can look at dials, so the KPIs of that particular engine room. We can take, and that can be very helpful to point us, to give us a direction. Then from there, is it the leader? Is it the engineer who's heading up that engine room? Or is it one of the dials, or one of the engines, or one of the technicians running one of the engines? So for example, in one of my companies, we hire executive assistants. One of my engines is my signature talk that I give. I spent $10,000 in a whole weekend with a world-class speaking coach to develop that engine. Then from there, there's how we do discovery calls. Then there's how do we hand off clients to the fulfillment team. There's how do they write a job posting to find an executive assistant. How do they interview candidates? I could go on and on, right? This in Mothership, this could be payroll. This could be how we onboard a new teammate. So these are all the engines, and I got to know what engine's broken. That is the constraint that's holding us back from getting ahead once again. So once you've identified where that issue is, now we can start saying who needs to be hired, fired, or retrained, what resources are required to be successful here, and what needs to be communicated to whom, be it to a customer or to a partner or to a teammate, in sometimes a courageous and uncomfortable kind of way to help get everyone clear and aligned on what needs to happen next. So that's the first model, a profit factory. Now the thing is that you can have a great profit factory, but it could still fail. And the main reason for that is because we do not operate in a vacuum. Every business on planet Earth operates in an environment. And that environment could be always changing. It could be changing in terms of who gets elected. Currently in 2025, as I'm shooting this, tariffs are a really, really big issue with the United States, and which is where I live, and also with my home country, Canada. Had a different person been elected in, there probably wouldn't be the tariffs. So the world is always changing around us. Regulations can affect things, public health. Didn't matter if you had the world's best restaurant on the best corner of New York City with 3 Michelin stars. When COVID-19 hit, you were shut down. That was outside of your control. Supply chain issues, Port of Los Angeles, Port of Long Beach, how many times has that been gummed up? And it's really messed with Amazon's business. It's really messed with e-commerce sellers. What about automation? Anyone heard of AI? Right? That's a massive force right now. Other internet factors, currency, commodities, competition, not on here but should be, is the aging population. We could add wars around the world, geopolitics. We could add any number of macros. And not every macro is going to affect your business, but you got to find the 80-20 of what does. What are the 1 to 3 maybe that make a really big difference for you? Now, a couple macros that I think every entrepreneur should be thinking about, and maybe it doesn't affect you, but really give it some thought, is the aging population. It's happening no matter what. That's not going to be changing whether someone gets elected or not, or whether the price of oil or gold or interest rates change. That does not affect, that's not going to change. People are getting older. That's how it is. Boomers in the next 15 years are aging out. What do you need to do to orient your business relative to that? The other force that seems to be pretty much guaranteed is AI. Maybe that doesn't affect you, maybe it does, but whether it's AI or aging population, I'd really give some time to think about how those may affect you. And maybe they don't affect you in a bad way. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to alter what you're doing to be that much more, let's say, riding the wave of these massive macro forces that are happening. So that is our first model, building a profit factory. The second thing I'm going to get into now is 10 questions you can ask about your business to see if maybe you can uncover some issues, and those issues may be present today, or those issues may be around the corner. They might be happening next year, they might be 5 years down the road. You definitely want to be thinking about them though. I myself, as I mentioned, I own a company that's located in the United States. We help entrepreneurs in the United States and Canada to get an executive assistant located in the United States or Canada. There's definitely a risk of AI wiping out this business model. And so it's something I'm thinking about all the time. Do I need to adjust this company so that it now offers AI agents? Do we need to train great assistants to also be able to drive AI? What needs to happen there such that I can make sure that the business is on the right side of the macro? That if there's this wave coming, which is coming, we don't know exactly how big, but there's this wave happening. How do we get a surfboard and get on top of the wave rather than be underneath the wave and get crushed by it? Okay, so here's the 10 questions. I'm going to go one at a time. I won't spend a ton of time on them. The good news is that these 10 questions are actually in the custom GPT that I promised to put in the description below. So you don't need to furiously scribble these all down, because I'll make sure that you get that GPT, and in that GPT has these 10 questions. Okay, so taking a look, the very first question is crushing demand. Does your business have crushing demand right now for what it does? One of the worst businesses to be in, Dan Kennedy says this all the time, the famous marketer, he says, the worst business to be in is the convincing business. If you have to try and explain some long, many sentence, many paragraph about what you do, and especially if the person listening is not your mom or dad, who, let's face it, our moms and dads have no idea what we do anyways, but I mean if it's a qualified prospect. If it's a qualified prospect who could theoretically sit down and have a discovery call with you, or some kind of a presentation, or they could try your product, and they can't understand it within a sentence or two, you need to change how you talk about your product, or you need a different product in the first place. There has to be crushing demand. You need to be in the face of that. Now, you also need to realize that sometimes there's crushing demand today, but maybe in 5 years later there isn't crushing demand, or maybe when you started your business 10 years ago there was crushing demand, but things have changed. We'll talk about change in just a few minutes, but crushing demand is definitely one of our 10 factors, our 10 keys to having a great business model that gives you a shot to make enough margin and cash such that you can hire enough people to replace you in the business so that you can now have a self-managing business. Okay, next up is fat margins. It is not what you make, it is what you keep. Marketer math out there says, there's no problem a good sales letter can't solve, or it's all about building a 6, 7, 8-figure business. I repeat, there have been many, many businesses I've seen the financials of. They grow from 6 to 7 to 8, and they literally run out of money despite the fact they have 8 figures of revenue. We have to actually keep something out of all that revenue that we generate. So that's fat margins. Next up is whatever it is that you do, is it teachable to others? Whether you sell a product or service, we have to be able to replace you. And we can't replace you unless we can teach what you do to other people. And if you can't teach what you do to staff members or a future hire, then you may need to adjust what you do, or you may have to adjust how it gets done. Maybe it's impossible to replace you. Like, let's think about Tony Robbins, right? Pretty much impossible to replace him. He can't teach being Tony in terms of being a face on the stage, but maybe he builds a coaching team. They actually tried also making a hologram of Tony. They tried that. And so, there might also just be the possibility that you realize there's just no replacing Tony. So what we got to do is we got to get as much of his brain into recorded products as much as possible. So once he passes on, we can continue to monetize his knowledge that way. Or maybe they just accept the fact, once Tony's done, this thing is done. So in the meantime, let's generate as many additional revenue streams that don't depend on him. That's actually a huge part of Tony Robbins' business model is, yes, he has Date with Destiny. Yes, he has Unleash the Power Within. Yes, he has his Platinum Partners program. Yes, he has all of these Tony-specific programs. But a huge part of what that does is that actually just attracts deal flow to him. And from there, he can invest in those businesses. He could start by just advising them and then maybe invest in them. So Tony now has interest in dozens of companies. And at this point, I don't know for sure, I haven't seen his financials, but I'm pretty sure that if Tony were to pass away, whenever that day comes, and let's say the whole Tony Robbins machine in terms of the live events and his various info products even, let's say all that just stopped. I bet you that the portfolio revenue and profit and distributions and whatnot that come off of his portfolio companies probably is so big that it blows away whatever Tony Robbins, the seminar business, does. So in that instance, if we can't get around the issue of Tony being irreplaceable, then in that case, maybe we just live with it, we accept it, but build other streams around him. Okay, the next thing is there a moat? Is there a way to create a moat around what it is that you do? Now, there's actually a lot of people, when they think about a moat, they think about only one direction. They think about, how do I defend my customers who are inside my kingdom from the outside world coming to attack my kingdom? I need a moat that I can pull up. I can pull the drawbridge up, and the moat will protect us. Well, the interesting thing is, yes, that's true. And we want a moat, and that could be because you have a really strong brand, or you have some intellectual property, or you have a trademark, or you have some proprietary process like the Coca-Cola recipe for cola or whatever, right? I debate how strong that is as a moat. I think their brand blows away their protection from their recipe of their syrup. The brand definitely trumps it, but nonetheless, a moat, it protects us. Now, the unexpected part is a moat actually also prevents your citizens of your kingdom from leaving. If that drawbridge is up and there's a big moat, it's very hard for them to leave. And there's ways that you can do that. And software companies have figured that out by making it so hard to quit their software. There's a lot of people, I myself, there's some software that I have. I hate the software. I don't like the user interface. I don't think it does a good job of some important things, but it's such a pain in the butt to switch software providers for our CRM or for a few other softwares that we're just stuck with it because it's way more painful to leave than just to stay and suffer. So now that's kind of like a dark side of having a moat to keep your people in. But the other part is actually if they love you so much that they never want to leave, right? So one maybe like not structural moat, but something Zappos did many, many years ago is they just said, we want our customers to be so happy they're never going to want to leave and never buy shoes anywhere else, right? So there's that customer relationship. I would say there's actually other kinds of relationship. For example, CrossFit gyms. There's such a relationship between the users, not even necessarily from them to the coach, although there's oftentimes a relationship to the coach. But sometimes the coach can change, but the members just stay because they love hanging out with each other so much. So that would be another kind of a moat, is actually inter-user moat, or a relationship acting as a moat. Okay, so there's a lot of different kinds of moats to keep the bad out, to keep the good in. That is our fourth factor to think about. Let's now think about the fifth one. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but I'll go into a little bit more. Are you on the right side of the macros? As we mentioned, everything from AI, aging populations, supply chains, international wars, price of gold, price of oil, interest rates, right side of macros. So I'm not going to go into that anymore. We already talked about that. Let's go to the next one. Do you have a positive cash cycle? Okay, too few entrepreneurs understand what this is, and it is like business 101. If you don't get this right, you're in a very, very difficult situation. There's a marketing firm that I knew of, and they had great margins. So, they sell $100,000 and they would keep like $50,000, which is really impressive. So these great 50% margins, and yet they were chronically running out of cash. How can that be, you say? Well, all it takes, and this was their error, was they would sign an agreement and then they would say to the new client, we will bill you at the end of every month, and that bill will be net 30. So in essence, the marketing company would work week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. All the meanwhile, the entrepreneur has to pay their staff for week 1, 2, week 3, week 4. And whether that staff is paid biweekly or monthly, it doesn't matter. At the end of the month, that entrepreneur is out tens of thousands of dollars to pay their staff. When has this entrepreneur been paid by the client? They haven't, because they're billing at the end of the month, and then they're giving them the entrepreneur is giving the client 30 days to pay it. So this entrepreneur has to keep paying their staff in week 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. That entrepreneur has to cover 2 months of all the expenses, and not just payroll to staff, but all the software. If they've got an office, there's rent to pay and utilities, like all these expenses, they don't stop, man. So those expenses just kept piling up and piling up and piling up. End of month 1, entrepreneur hasn't paid. They send the invoice. End of month 2, they finally get paid. So now this entrepreneur is literally out 2 months worth of expenses, and not a lot of businesses can live with that. Now, unfortunately, this entrepreneur, as a marketing person, and they believe that marketing cures all, decided, I'm going to go get another client. That's the problem. I just need more clients. So they go get a second client, but they cut the exact same deal where it was bill you at the end of the month, net 30. So now this entrepreneur actually had double the cash crisis because they just multiplied the dysfunction of a bad cash cycle. This business, the marketing firm, did great work, great margins, their customers love them, their staff love them. Every metric you could think of, except for one, they're in a great spot, and that was a bad cash cycle. They did not realize this, they did not correct that, and they ended up having to part ways and scramble for their dear life just to stay afloat. If they just would have switched the cash cycle, they'd still be in business today, still serving probably a lot of the same clients. Okay, so that is our 6th item, is a positive cash cycle. Our 7th is community. This is not required. Where cash cycle is absolutely required, community number 7 is not required. Okay, but I will tell you that it makes your life a whole lot easier when you've got that. There's been some of my businesses I've had it and it's been wonderful. Other businesses I have not, and I've suffered because of it. Every church in the history of mankind has had a place of worship, a sacred text, often, not always, a charismatic leader, common rituals, common clothing, right? So there's a formula here to build a devout following on what you're doing. And so if you can generate some kind of, I don't mean to call it place of worship, but like at CrossFit, that gym is where people congregate to go do CrossFit. Something like ClickFunnels, which is a software CRM, they have something called Funnel Hacking Live, which is their annual event where they invite all their users to buy a ticket to come to Funnel Hacking Live to learn all about marketing, internet marketing. And of course, they're showing here's how you can use your account to ClickFunnels to be able to use this strategy. So there's user conferences that are possible. I also think that part of building community is having some kind of, whether it's a sacred text like a newsletter or something like that that goes out regularly. It could be a podcast that you've got. I mean, look at the community around someone like a Joe Rogan or a Tim Ferriss or a James Clear. I mean, those guys have built massive followings, and maybe their users don't meet each other like at CrossFit. Maybe their users don't have an in-person experience like a CrossFit or a Funnel Hacking Live, and yet there's just like a rabid following around those thought leaders. So whether it's in person, maybe even an event, maybe even users meet each other, or it's the written word or a podcast or a YouTube channel, or it's both, and you kind of get the full meal deal, that puts so much more security around your customers continuing to come back and back. If your business can get it clicked in, great business advantage for you. Next up is monthly recurring revenue. This is one of those that when I've had it, I have totally just been soaring high. And when I've not had it, I sooner or later came to deeply, deeply regret it. So there's different kinds of monthly recurring revenue. If you don't know what MRR is, it's basically when you can sell something to a client once and they pay you month after month after month after month after month after month after month. So some examples of that include a marketing company that offers services every month after month after month after month to their clients, or some kind of a coach or consultant doing exactly the same. Another example would be if you have some kind of a mastermind or some kind of in-person experience like a CrossFit gym or like Strategic Coach, right, has its members come, I think it's 3 times a year, 4 times a year. I was in Strategic Coach a very long time ago. I don't remember exactly how. But there's members coming back and they're paying, every year to re-up or every month to re-up to keep going. So retainers are an option. Subscriptions are an option. If you offer ongoing maintenance, that's a great subscription. If you have like lawn care and snow removal and you just serve, when it's snowing, your snow removal, and when it's sun shining and it's spring and summer, you do lawn care, and you just have those people on subscription, right? Awesome stuff. Extended guarantees, insurance, also examples of MRR. It is hilarious to me that the insurance industry is the one thing you buy that you hope you never use, right? I guess maybe a fire detector or a fire extinguisher. You don't want to use those either. But generally speaking, it's just hilarious how much money we spend all the time on insurance with the hope that we never need to use it. What a great business for them, right? What a great business for them. In fact, it is one of the pillars as to why Warren Buffett was able to become so successful, was investing in Geico, where he could get premiums up front, have this big block of cash, and yes, he'd have to pay out insurance disaster moments from time to time, but he could use that float of cash to be able to go do different things. MRR, it's probably the 9th wonder of the world. We've got the 7 wonders of the world, we've got compound interest is number 8, and then MRR is probably the 9th wonder of the world. Okay, next up is, can you sell into organized communities? So when I mean organized communities, it's like, what kind of gathering places exist that you can just stand in front of? So for example, an organized committee is CrossFit. So if you were to go to a CrossFit group and you had some kind of a fitness, a diet or stretching thing or some kind of device, you could talk to all the members of that gym at once. If you are an attorney, or let's say you sell to attorneys, Every year there's a user conference for Clio, which is a really common CRM. So ClioCon happens every year. This year it actually happened in Austin, and which is where I live. And so you would immediately get access to hundreds and hundreds of lawyers just by speaking on their stage, right? So organized communities. Organized communities is not just in person. It could be a Facebook group. There's lots of Facebook groups around parenting and fitness and weight loss and anything you can think of, right? So where can you go to get to an organized community? And part of what's great about that is now you can just buy access. You'd be shocked how many stages at conferences are actually paid for by the speaker, where the speaker has to pay $10,000 or $20,000 to get a speaking slot on that stage, which can be worth it because if that speaker has some kind of service that they can charge $20,000 a user for, if they pay $20 to get on stage and there's 500 people in the audience, if they make one sale, maybe they've broken even, right? Depending on what their margins are and what the direct costs are. At worst, maybe it's 2 clients. And if the speaker knows, hey, attorneys are my jam and I have the exact solution for a bleeding neck problem they've got right now, that service provider gladly pay the 10 or 20 grand, step on stage, 500 people paying attention, all qualified, and let's go. Okay, so selling to organized communities is a big advantage. This 10th and final item, we touched on it somewhat already with the Tony Robbins example, is key person risk. So how dependent is your business on any single person or client? Now, we as entrepreneurs, oftentimes we are the biggest key man risk because if we go down, then the business is toast, right? So there's key man risk on us. There could be key man risk on a star staff member. There could also be key risk on one client, and that's called concentration risk, when too much of our revenue comes from one big client. If any client represents 20% or more of your overall revenue, you're at risk. And I had this happen. I was a consultant I was an ops consultant probably 14, 15 years ago, and I had one client who represented $10,000 a month of my income. And I think my total income was like $20,000 a month or something like that. It's a long time ago. And I was over the moon when I signed them up. I made more money at once. I'd never sold a 5-figure, sale before. And here this person's paying me 10 grand the first month, 10 grand the second month, 10 grand the third month. And towards the end of that third month, I started to get used to getting that kind of money. I started hiring more people. I started signing up for higher end masterminds and networking, which was wonderful for me to grow. But at the end of the third month, he said, I need to wrap this up. And all of a sudden, 50% of all my revenue is gone in one call. That's it. So that key person risk is something to really keep an eye on. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a bonus behind the scenes here. These 10 points not only help you to build a great business today, but they actually help you build a saleable business down the road. The more that you have those 10 factors dialed in, the more that an acquirer is going to like your business and give you a bigger multiple and ultimately a much higher valuation, and ultimately you get a much bigger paycheck at the end of the transaction. It may not seem like a big deal now, but I've been in these conversations quite heavily this year on a collection of different deals, and it is like, no kidding. There are some investors, their buy box, what they're willing to buy, literally says, I will not buy anything that does not have MRR, or I will not buy anything unless there's a clear path to someone other than the entrepreneur selling. And they won't buy the business unless there is that kind of de-risking out of whether it's a key client, a key person, or whatnot. So do a great job today of building your business today around these 10 items, and that puts you in a much, much, much better path for your tomorrows, whether that's tomorrow or next year or next decade, when you end up wanting to exit the business, and you'll be so happy that you did. Okay, so I showed you the Profit Factory as a way to diagnose how we're doing. I also gave you these 10 points that we talked about for diagnosing like some business model fundamentals. And I also promised you that I would get you a link to a custom GPT that you can use to start diagnosing your own business. So that GPT, I call it the Ready to Scale Coach. The reason I call it the Ready to Scale Coach is because it's good to make sure that your business model is in good shape before you go and build a whole profit factor around it. If you're going to build a profit factor on something, you better make sure that it's ready to scale. Otherwise, you're just going to be multiplying dysfunction, as I talked about with that marketing agency earlier. So let's head over to this custom GPT, take a look at it. It just looks like this. So it's Ready to Scale Coach by GoHP3.com. That's the link to go to if you'd like to subscribe to my email newsletter. And you can simply start with one of these questions. How can I build a moat around my business? Where might my business model be weak? That kind of thing. I think this is a great place to start. Where might my business model be weak? Then from there, you simply start telling about your business, and it's going to take you through each of the 10 different factors that I shared with you over in our 10 keys, which is right here. So it'll take you one by one through there, and it'll give you a good idea of what you can do to help to strengthen your business model, which then makes it worthwhile for you to put all the time, energy, talent, and money into building a profit factory around your business. I recommend that you subscribe. I put out videos like this regularly. It's very motivating to see that subscriber count go up. I have to say, it's totally a vanity metric, and yet it still motivates me because I'm a real human being. Just best not to build a business around vanity metrics. I also put in a newsletter once per week. It's at gohp3.com. Do check that out. I send it out once per week. I can go deeper into different case studies and offer you different ways that you can achieve higher levels of performance in profit, performance, and purpose, which is the 3 HPs: high performance, high purpose, and high profit. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. I'll see you in the next one.